Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, where we take up the articles from the Hindu and discuss them as per the demands of Civil Services Examination. The topics of the discussion are listed on your screen. Moving on to the first article of the day that has featured in the Hindu on page number 6, basically talks about National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. Now this particular topic is important with regard to the GS4 syllabus as mentioned in the UPSC and highlights the ethical dilemmas or the ethical issues that are involved in this case. We'll try to understand the context of the case first and then discuss the various ethical issues that were involved in this case. Now, the particular case deals with the practice of civil society organizations which are using representative visuals for fundraising activities concerning the development issues such as malnourishment. Now, the NCPCR wrote to NGOs across the country on practice of raising funding, domestic as well as those of international, for their NGOs through advertisement while showing vulnerable minor children in deplorable conditions. The particular direction came in the light of 2013 campaign which was run by the UK-based NGO Save the Children titled Khushi and featured a 20-month-old baby lying on a hospital bed at a malnutrition treatment center in Rajasthan. The narrator describes her as a malnourished child in need of help and makes an appeal that please will you help, please donate 500 a month and make a difference. Another similar campaign by the NGO titled Anand depicting an infant whose ribs can be seen sticking out under his skin is at the center for fresh controversy that has sparked a debate on the imagery among child rights organizations. Now, there was another letter by the Ministry of Women and Child Development to all states and union territories. The letter named Save the Children and its campaign to tackle malnutrition in tribal children by raising 800 from general public and call it misleading on the ground that the issue of malnutrition was being vigorously pursued by the government through its Saksham Anganwadi and schemes like Poshan 2.0, and also asked the states to report similar incidents involving NGOs and take the appropriate measures to expose the false information. As per the guidelines mentioned on the website with regard with the new updated media policy, it says that clear priority is to generate the response that will help fund the work of these NGOs and which will require that the NGOs create and publish its challenging and hard-hitting imagery. However, at the same time, it also mentions that efforts are also made to ensure that it does not objectify, belittle, or dehumanize children. It also mentions that informed consent of the subject or their family is obtained for the photos and it is ensured that they understand the use of which their images may be put up as well as the possible consequences of the same. In this regard, the UNICEF's 8 quick steps to ethical imagery suggest asking the question if he or she were my child, how would I want him or her to portray it? It also warned against the other extreme of using happy and cute images of children as they tend to objectify children into an idealized and sentimentalized happiness that negates the complexities of the real life. Now, this issue is particularly important with regard to the recent times, as the government concern over visual representation of children comes at a time when it has doggedly challenged global reports on rising level of malnutrition in India. In 2020, a warning on how COVID-19's impact on access to healthcare services as well as the food system could result in a rise of malnourished children has led to strong response by the union government. The union government further has repeatedly rejected India's performance in Global Hunger Index and has questioned the methodology that was adopted. India was ranked 107 among the 121 countries in the 2022 index, that is the Global Hunger Index. Now we have taken this news as a part of case study for section under the GS paper 4. And now we'll try to analyze the various ethical issues that are involved in this particular case, ranging from the responsibility of the government as well as the failure of the government machinery to ensure development for all and particularly the fight against the hunger. We'll also try to understand what are the various ethical issues involved with regard to the NGO, the question of law, and the long term versus the short term solutions for the same. Now, the first ethical issue that is involved here is that of issue of means versus the end, or which can be also understood as the teleological approach versus the deontological approach that we study under the ethics section. The deontological ethics focus on means as well as end, whereas the teleological approach focuses on the end and focuses that the end justifies the means. Here in this case, it is clear that NGO had used controversial pictures of already vulnerable section, that is the children who were suffering from hunger, as a means to achieve the ends of their welfare. The children were used as a means. As per utilitarian perspective, there is nothing bad in using such pictures as the ultimate end is good, that is the welfare of the malnourished children, particularly from the poor families or the weaker sections of the society. But on the other hand, as per the deontological approach, both ends as well as means are important and means justify the ends. Hence, the use of controversial pictures is therefore unethical irrespective of its objective. The second question or the second ethical issue involved here is that of compassion versus the law. It is clear from the case that NGOs are compassion oriented towards the most vulnerable sections of the society, but to do so, they need to collect resources. Here in this form, we have seen this collection and posting of images that are hard hitting to the general public to attract investment and donations from public at large. And this requires them to use such imagery, while law of the land restricts them from doing so. Thus, the compassionate and the noble objectives of the NBO are directly going against the law of the land. The third ethical issue involved here is the failure of government in fulfilling its moral as well as legal obligations. As per the case, given the ranking of India in Global Hunger Index is very low, we have seen that the ranking of India is currently 107 of the 121 countries that were ranked, which indicates the failure of the government in achieving the obligations. Further, if we can understand it better, we can see it as a failure of the government to achieve the ideals of the DPSP or the directive principles of the state policy as enshrined in Indian Constitution under Article 47 that provides for to raise the level of nutrition and the standard of living of people and to improve public health. And the government has failed to fulfill the moral duty of welfare of its subject as advocated by the social contract theory. The fourth ethical issue that is mentioned here is emphasis on the problem hiding rather than solving it up. Now, the particular case involves is hiding the problem or pushing them under the carpet. In this case, it is fact that the ranking of India is very poor on the hunger index. But this worst condition of malnutrition is also supported by the data provided by the National Family Health Survey 5 that was released, which says that more than half of the children and women are anemic in 13 of the 22 states and UTs. But still, the government is reluctant to accept the gravity of the problem that is facing them and is focused on hiding and giving a rosy picture for the same. The government is also questioning the methodology of the Global Hunger Index, while its own survey, that is the National Family Health Surveys, identifies the same typical problem of hidden hunger and hunger at large. The fifth and the last ethical issue that this case points out is the preference over the short term image at the cost of long term harm. Restricting NGOs from using appealing images of already deprived and victims of poverty and hunger may help the government to improve the image in the short run, but it may pose a serious threat to the aim of healthy India in the longer run. NGOs or the civil society reflects the current level of development and also pushes the government continuously to perform better on various levels and particularly highlights the socio-economic conditions and the ways to improve them and also at the same time supports the government in its effort. But such an advisory that is issued by the government pushes back the role of NGOs. NGOs should be seen as complementary to the government in dealing with such deep rooted issues. If they are not allowed to use these images, then their funding may be reduced, which in turn will limit their reach and intensity of their contribution, and at the last will harm the public at large. With this, we have seen the various ethical issues that were involved in the particular case. We have also tried to understand in our discussion as what was the context behind the advisory given by the National Commission on Protection of Child Rights. As well as we have also seen that what was the UN guideline. Moving on to the next article of the day that has featured on page 8 of the Hindu, basically it talks about the Delhi High Court verdict on the RAU'S trademark. Now this particular case involved the manufacturers of RAU'S who have moved to Delhi High Court against Southern Laboratories product called as Dilafza, and they wanted injunction regarding it. Now the Delhi High Court ruled in the favor of Hamdard, that is the manufacturers of RAU'S, and declared that as the product is low priced and is consumable, average customers would not deliberate on the details of the product while taking high value investment decisions that may otherwise be done. Now, this article is particularly important with regard to the different types of intellectual property rights that are guaranteed in India, as UPSC under the GS3 syllabus has also mentioned issues relating to the intellectual property rights. Under this article, we'll try to understand what are the different types of intellectual property rights that are available in India and try to distinguish between the various rights such as copyrights, trademarks, industrial design, patents, etc. Now, intellectual property in basic terms refers to specific types of intangible assets which have been created owing to the applications of one's mental faculties, meaning thereby it is a creation of one's creativity. The requirements for obtaining registration for intellectual property rights may vary as per the type of asset under the consideration. The benefit of these intellectual property rights is that it guarantees various rights for protection and commercialization of assets. Thus, intellectual property rights are classified in universal manner across the globe with minor changes that are specific to the jurisdiction. In India, we follow different forms of intellectual property rights that are labeled under copyrights, trademarks, patents, GI or geographical indications, designs, semiconductor integrated circuit layouts, and also with regard to the plant varieties. Now we'll try to discuss them one by one and try to distinguish between the nature and the type of rights that is guaranteed under. The first right in this regard is the copyright from the Copyright Act of 1957. Now you all must have come across this symbol under the various standard books which you have read in school or at colleges, and this is the symbol of copyright. Now the Copyright Act of 1957 protects the expression of an idea rather than the idea itself. Under the section 13 of the Copyright Act, a protection under copyright can be obtained for original literary, dramatic, musical and artistic works, also with regard to films and that of sound recordings. Further, a copyright protection can also be obtained for the computer programs. A copyright thus is an exclusive right that is granted to a person to do or authorize to carry out certain activities with regards with the copyrighted work. For example, in case of literary, dramatic or musical work, the owner or any person authorized by the owner is permitted to perform the work, make translation of such work and make adaptations of the work. You must have seen various movies that are made on some books, particular example being that of Three Idiots. Now, this was a movie which was made on a novel which was written by Chetan Bhagan, and the makers of the movie has to first purchase the right of the literary work. Further, the Copyright Act under section 17 clearly states that the author of the original work shall be the first owner of the work. Further, the owner has the right to license the copyright of their work to third parties through a written agreement, which we have discussed as an example of the Three Idiots, where the license was provided for the same. Now the next set of right is that of trademark. The Trademark Act 1999 defines a trademark as a mark which is capable of being represented graphically and which is capable of distinguishing the goods or services of one person from those of others. And this was the case of Hamdard presently with regard to RAU'S versus the Dilafza of Southern Laboratories, in which the court has ruled in the favors of Hamdard, that is RAU'S. In simpler words, it can be understood that a trademark provides protection for symbols, color, shape, words, etc., representing and relating to a good or service. Where other companies which uses the trademark is that of Bisleri, Tata, Mahindra, Bata, etc. It is a thing to notice that a trademark application need not to be filed in respect of marks which are in use, but can also be filed in respect of marks which are intended to be used in future. For example, if the product is not floated, then also the trademark can be registered. The primary requirement for registration of trademark includes that it should consist of mark that is capable of distinguishing the goods and services from those of others, and it is capable of graphical representation. However, the same Trademark Act also provides for the ground of refusal. If the mark is not distinctive in character, if the mark is deceptive or confusing, if it is hurtful to the religious sentiments of people, or if the mark is offensive and scandalous. In addition to the absolute grounds of refusal, the statute also provides for relative grounds of refusal of registration. For example, similarity with pre-existing mark is also a ground of refusal of trademark. The next type of intellectual property rights that is guaranteed in India is that of patent. Now, a patent is an intellectual property right which protects any new invention. It is an exclusive right that protects the rights of inventor and prevents other people to unauthorized use and misappropriate the registered patent. For example, you must have came across in the news of foldable phones whose design has been patented by the Apple. A patent is granted for a term of 20 years from the date of filing of the application. It is important to note that patent for a new invention is registered only if the invention is novel and original. That is, it has not been introduced in the public domain in India or anywhere else in the world and is capable of industrial application. The next intellectual property right that is guaranteed in India is related to design. The Design Act of 2000 provides for the same. Includes only the features of shape, configuration, pattern, ornaments, or composition of lines or colors which is applied to an article whether in 2D or that of 3D, and which in the finished article are appealed to and are judged only by the eye. For example, here we can see the design of a bottle, or that for the chiller for the drinks whose owner is that of Pepsi, or that related to a car whose owner is that of Tata Motors. The next intellectual property right that is guaranteed in India is related to GI, or the Geographical Identification of Goods, and it is provided by the GI Act of 1999. The Geographical Identification of Goods, Registration and Protection Act 1999, or the GI Act provide for the same. It is defined as an indication which identifies such goods such as agricultural goods, natural goods or manufactured goods which are originating or are manufactured in a particular territory of a country or a region in that country, where the quality, reputation and the other characteristics of goods is essentially attributed to its geographical origin. The GI Act further covers only goods such as agricultural goods, foodstuff, handicraft goods, manufactured goods, and natural goods. Now, the GI tag you must have seen in the newspaper as it is consistently being given to the food articles or the products which are originating from a particular region. For example, that of Darjeeling tea. Now, Darjeeling tea is unique and popular owing to many factors, including the area of its origin, the skill set of the tea farmers of the Darjeeling, the weather that is prevalent in that area, making it unique to that place. Another example of same can be seen as that of Banarsi sari or that of Basmati rice. The next two intellectual property rights that are guaranteed in India is with regard to the protection of plant varieties and farmer rights, which is provided by the 2001 Act. The objective of the Protection of Plant Varieties and the Farmer Right Act is to recognize rights of Indian farmers and to provide protection to plant varieties in order to encourage the growth and development of more plant varieties. And this was done when India became a member of the TRIPS, or the trade related aspects of intellectual property rights, under which it was required for all the members to accommodate and provide for protection of plant varieties. The last intellectual property right guaranteed in India is that of semiconductor IC circuits or the integrated circuit layout, via the Design Act 2000. Now, it has also defined the semiconductor integrated circuit as a product having transistors and other circulatory elements which are inseparably formed on a semiconductor material or an insulating material and is designed to perform an electronic circulatory function. So with this we have discussed the various rights that are guaranteed under the intellectual property rights in India related to copyrights, trademarks, protection of plant varieties, design, semiconductor IC circuit layout, etc. Moving to the next article of the day that has featured on the Hindu on page 10 basically talks about the Parliamentary Panel on Social Justice and Empowerment that has pulled up the Union government over the very slow process to categorize over 260 denotified nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes under the SC, ST and OBC list. Now this article also talks about the seed scheme. Now this article is important as UPSC under the GS2 syllabus provides for the welfare schemes for the vulnerable section of population by the center and the state government, and in the previous year, that is in 2016, has asked a question related to tribals, that was why are tribals in India refers to as scheduled tribes, indicate the major provisions enshrined in the Constitution of India for their upliftment. So this area becomes important for us as UPSC can well further ask a question related to denotified tribes and the various issues and challenges faced by them. Under this article, we will first try to understand basically what are denotified tribes or nomadic or semi-nomadic tribes, what are the challenges they face, and then we will discuss about the seed scheme. The article further says that due to delay, the approval of benefits under the seed scheme, that is scheme for economic empowerment of the denotified tribes, is also getting delayed. A total of over 5,400 applications had been received under the seed scheme, but none of them have been approved and no amount has been sanctioned till date. It further says that delay in locating them would increase their suffering and they would not be able to get benefit of the prevailing schemes that is meant for the welfare of SCs and NCT. Thus, they highlight the urgent need of categorizations of these denotified tribes under the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe or the OBC list. Now, we'll try to understand who are basically denotified tribes, nomadic tribes and semi-nomadic tribes. Denotified tribes, nomadic tribes and semi-nomadic tribes are the most deprived and economically weaker communities in India. And there are historical reasons behind this. They are also known as Vimukta Jati and were originally listed as criminal tribes. Once the tribe became notified, all the members were required to register with the local magistrate, and failing to which they will be charged with crime under the IPC. Further, the misery of the communities began with the enactment of the Criminal Tribes Act of 1871 during the British rule, as these communities were later subjugated, persecuted and neglected. The policies of the colonial government affected the lives as well as the livelihood opportunity for these tribes. This led to their forcible alienation from the traditional occupation and the habitation. And this has contributed for them remaining as hunters and gatherers and are restricted to pastoral and peripatetic activities. This brings us to the next question, that what are the various challenges that these denotified tribes or the nomadic and the semi-nomadic tribes face due to their historical condition. Due to the historical atrocities that have been committed over them, today these tribes face various challenges. The first challenge is that of lack of basic infrastructure facilities. As discussed, these are the most persecuted and most vulnerable and the weakest section of our society. And most of these tribes lack basic infrastructural facilities like that of clean drinking water, health and education, and the absence of which causes to remain weak in perpetuity. Further, due to stigma of criminals being associated with them as a result of Criminal Tribes Act of 1871, they still face administrative apathy today. They are still treated with negative attitude by the administration today. As and also discussed in the article, there is not proper caste categorization of these tribes under the SC and the OBC or the ST list. What this does is that it prevents them from availing benefits that are available to most of the vulnerable section of the population of the SC, ST, and the various schemes that the government at the union and at the state level launches for their support and upliftment. Further, due to their nomadic nature, they also lack any kind of social security cover which the government provides for. They even don't have basic identification cards like that of ration card, Aadhaar card, etc. As we have seen that the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe have been provided some of the constitutional support, have been given the constitutional support. But such a constitutional support is lacking to these tribes, and thus they do not have any constitutional backing to fight for their rights. All this has led to marginalization from social and economic mainstream, and which has perpetuated till now. Further, there is no voice as they are not represented by any political leaders, and also there is an absence of leadership among themselves also, which further hinders their progress. It was in this regard that the government was pained to see the miserable conditions in which members of these communities are living, and to give impetus for the planned development, the Ranke Commission was set up in 2008. It identified the population of these tribes close to 10.74 crore, and 1262 communities have been identified as denotified, nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes. Further, government also constituted a national commission in the year 2015 for their upliftment. Based on the recommendations of the commission, that is National Commission for the Upliftment of these Denotified Tribes, Government of India has also set up Development and Welfare Board for Denotified Tribes, Semi-Nomadic Tribes and Nomadic Tribes in the year 2019. Now we'll try to understand about the seed scheme which the government has recently launched. The seed scheme has basically four major components. The first component is providing educational empowerment, that is free coaching to be given to students of these communities to appear for civil services and entry into professional courses like that of medicine, engineering and that of MBA. The second component here is to provide health insurance through Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana of National Health Authority. The third is to secure livelihood opportunities for these tribes and to support income generation activities among them. And the last is to ensure housing under the initiative Housing for All through Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana or the Indra Awas Yojana. The second step under this is the allocation of funds, and the government has allocated 200 crore to be spent over the next 5 years beginning from 2021-22. Further, the implementation agency is also important here, as the Development and Welfare Board for Denotified Tribes, Semi-Nomadic Tribes and the Nomadic Tribes, which was formulated in 2019 as we have already discussed, has been tasked with the implementation of this scheme. Another important key feature under the scheme is that there is an online portal which has been developed by the department, and this portal will ensure seamless registration and will also act as a repository of data on these communities. They are easy accessible on mobile phone with its mobile application, and it will provide real-time status of application to the applicant. Further, the payment to the beneficiaries will be directly done into their bank accounts. So with this, we have seen what basically is the seed scheme. We have also seen the implementation agency, the key features. Along with that, we have also seen the various challenges that the denotified tribes, nomadic tribes and the semi-nomadic tribes today face, and discuss the observation made by the parliamentary panel. Moving on to the last article of the day that has appeared on the page 5 of the Hindu, basically talks about the PRASAD project or the PRASAD stream. The article highlights President Draupadi Murmu inaugurating project for improving facilities for tourists at the pilgrim town of Sri Salem in Andhra Pradesh, and the projects were launched under the PRASAD scheme. Now the project launch includes pilgrim complex, aesthetic illumination at the temple, laying of road, etc. The improved facilities would ease the spiritual visit of the pilgrims and create employment opportunities at the same time. Now, The PRASAD scheme is important as it highlights the major government schemes that have been introduced by the government and can be asked in the prelims examination. Also, it can be asked under the art and culture section of the GS1 in the prelims examination. We'll first try to understand what is the PRASAD scheme and later try to understand some of the facts about the Sri Salem pilgrimage town and the architecture there. Now, the National Mission on Pilgrimage Rejuvenation and Spiritual Augmentation Drive, or commonly known as PRASAD, was launched in 2014-15 by the Ministry of Tourism. The earlier HRIDAY scheme was discontinued and the program of heritage development was also included in the PRASAD scheme only. And the name was also later changed to PRASAD, which includes National Mission on Pilgrimage Rejuvenation and Spiritual Heritage Augmentation Drive. Now, another thing to notice here is that the projects identified under the scheme will be implemented by the respective state governments or the union territories through their identified agencies. Ministry of Tourism will provide the state governments with necessary central financial assistance to promote tourism at the selected destination. The project components was undertaken for public funding is 100% to be funded by the central government. Another important feature of the scheme is to improve the sustainability of the project. Corporate social responsibility and public-private partnership will also be utilized as a method to attract funding. With this, we have seen what are the various clauses under the scheme, when it was introduced, the incorporation of HRIDAY scheme under it, the implementation by the state government, and 100% central government assistance to be given by the Ministry of Tourism to the respective state government. The objective of the scheme was very peculiar. It aims to promote local culture and art. It aims to make the pilgrimage destination attractive for the tourist and make experience more comfortable for them. Develop world-class infrastructure in the religious places, which will also generate employment opportunities and increase the footfall of tourists in the destination. Apart from giving a boost to infrastructure and boosting employment, the scheme also has a component to promote the pro-poor concept of tourism and make pilgrimage an affordable affair for all the people. Initially, Kamakhya in Assam, Dwarka in Gujarat, Amravati in Andhra Pradesh, Gaya in Bihar, Amritsar in Punjab, Ajmer in Rajasthan, Puri in Odisha, Kedarnath in Uttarakhand, Kanchipuram in Tamil Nadu, Varanasi in Uttar Pradesh, and Mathura also in Uttar Pradesh was identified to be implemented. But now the cities have been expanded. The goal of the scheme is to prioritize, plan, and sustainably develop pilgrimage sites which would offer full-fledged religious experience and utilize the potential of pilgrimage tourism in India. Now that we have understood what the scheme was, we'll try to understand the architecture and about the town of Sri Salem. Now, Sri Salem or Mallikarjun is an ancient and sacred temple which is situated on the top of Nallamalla Hills in the state of Andhra Pradesh. The presiding deity of this place is Brahma Mallikarjun Swami in the natural stone formation in the shape of a lingam. Now, goddess Parvati is depicted as Brahma and Lord Shiva is worshipped as Mallikarjun. It is significant not only to the Hindu sects of Shaivism, but is an important place with regard to the Shaktism, as this temple is referred to one of the 12 Jyotirlingas of Shiva and one of the Shakti Pitas which is centered around Hindu goddess. So we have seen that not only it is a Jyotirlingas, as it was also asked in the prelims examination previously, it is also a seat for Shaktism and highlights a Shakti Pita. Moving on to the architecture of the temple, it houses 4 gateway towers which are known as Gopurams and consist of many halls, and most notable one is that of Mukha Mandapa, which is built during the Vijayanagar period. The temple also houses a mirror hall having the images of Nataraja. With this, we have discussed what is the PRASAD scheme, and we have also discussed about the temple and the Sri Salem town, where we have understood about the Jyotirlinga that is placed there and also as a place of worship of Shaktism or a Shakti Peeth.